1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. This gives me a good way when I do the video. When I do the 1, 2, 3, 4, I can line it up. If that makes sense. Yeah, no, it's okay.
Not really, but that's okay.
That is okay. Okay.
You're the editing guy.
I'm the editor today.
I'm the personality.
Yeah. Be the personality.
All right, so yeah, you give us.
Oh, hello and thank you for joining our channel.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Avak.
We are here to discuss ideas and current events,
From what's happening in the world
to ideas about God and spirituality.
and everything in between.
If you like what you hear, subscribe to the Revolutionology YouTube channel or to the podcast through the podcast app.
Or visit revolutionology.org.
Now that we have the boring stuff out of the way, let's get started.
Yeah.
So we found it fitting that for our very first show ever that we wanted to be able to introduce you a little bit to who we are. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Avak. Well, he's going to tell you about himself, namely, and then I'll do the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
So Avak, by the way, it's Avak. It's not Aardvark, and it's not Havoc. Even though Havoc would be a pretty cool name, I think it'd be more fitting for the Revolutionology podcast. So go change your name. We'll get more followers. That'd be better. So Avak, tell me a little bit about who you are. Where do you come from? Where does your weird name come from?
Yeah.
What are your passions? What's your vision for your life?
So, that's a big question. Definitely, there's a lot to that. So, I am Armenian. I'm 23 years old. Born and raised in Sacramento. That could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I guess it just depends on how you look at it. But I'm definitely proud of where I'm from. I am first generation, so my family came here as refugees from Armenia. I am the firstborn, so they came in 1992. I'm born 94, firstborn in here. Passions, very passionate about people and trying to change the world and effectively reach people around the world that need help. I would say one of my biggest drives, like creatively, is music. Music is something that I love, so music and mixed martial arts, that's another big thing. Been doing mixed martial arts for, man, how long have I been doing it actually? Now I gotta think about it. For a long, long time, pretty much.
What are your styles?
So, that is another good question. So, I like pretty much everything, but mostly what I like to do, I like boxing and I like wrestling and I like jiu-jitsu. So the jiu-jitsu wrestling aspect, I love submissions, but I love just using my hands. Kicks and stuff I really like too. I'm just not as flexible for it. So you got to have a lot of leg dexterity and a lot of core strength for it. And I'm just not there yet.
And we were talking about mixed martial arts earlier today. What did you say about doing what you love to do? Right? In line with mixed martial arts? I hate the saying, just do what you love to do. And then he had a response to that, which I thought was pretty good.
So everyone always says, just do what you love to do. And kind of what you were saying, you're not going to love it all the time. And same thing with fighting. Like, sometimes I get my ass whooped, but I mean, I don't love getting beat up. I don't like getting my butt whooped, but I really love, like, the biggest thing with mixed martial arts that I've always been attracted to as a kid was the willpower. Like, you are in there with one person and it's you against them, and who is gonna win, who's gonna make it out, who's gonna break, and it's kind of like these two opposite powers against each other in a way. And I know this really good quote that I heard from one of my favorite fighters, Chael Sonnen, and he said, when you're in the ring and you're super tired, you've gotten beat up as much as you can, the person's on top of you just, hitting you and everything. He's like, you can find 1,000 reasons to quit, but you need to find the one reason to not quit and hold on to that reason. And that's how you end up winning. I think the same thing kind of applies to a lot of people's passions.
Yeah. What about life in general? Do you feel like that applies to life in general?
Yeah, I honestly genuinely believe that fighting is just the physical manifestation of what people do every day. That's why everyone's attracted to it, is because there's like this fight going on and everyone wants to see this person win, or whoever it may be, whoever they have picked. But usually everyone's attracted to it because that's a universal sport You know, it's not like for soccer, like, okay, the UK is crazy about it, basketball, football, things like that. America's crazy about it, hockey's, you know, Canada.
Mm.
Fighting is actually universal. Everyone loves it in every country. It's super popular. And that's what I was saying. I think it's just like the physical manifestation of what everyone experiences every day. And for them, it's like they have that one person picked and they kind of identify themselves with that person. And that makes them really, like, you know, passionate about it as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I've never fought in formally, but I like that idea that, hey, it's you against that other person,
Mm-hmm.
and me, I mean, I'm not a fan of competition, so as soon as someone is trying to compete
Really?
with me, I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I don't think so. I like to compete with myself, but
Yeah.
against other people, but I also like the idea of beating people up sometimes. So,
Gotta show them who's boss.
so that's not about competition. That's just let me get some anger out.
Let me do work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about who are your special people in your life?
Yeah, special people in my life. I mean, do you mean like as fighters or as like when you say special people?
Nah, I'm more like trying to get you to talk about your girlfriend a little bit.
Oh, oh, okay. There we go. Yeah. If you're listening to this, B, you know, sorry. No. Yeah. So B, she's very, very special to me. That's my girlfriend. We were dating for a year now. April 11th has been the first year.
Just my birthday.
Yeah, which is his birthday. Yeah. Very special day. Why'd you have to be born on that day? No, I'm kidding.
What's more special?
I mean, yeah, I mean, so very special person to me. Met her, and she means a lot to me. I've never met anyone that is actually that whole, but also that unique. And she's a very committed person, which I very, very much appreciate. So again, if you're listening to this, B, I appreciate you. Love you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
For a second, I thought you meant who motivates me. So
Oh,
I was like,
yeah.
that's like a whole nother thing too. Like, there's so many different people, and it depends on, based on what it is.
That makes sense. I mean, you were talking about fighting, and fighting is a kind of a microcosm of motivation for life and all that kind of fun stuff, and
Yeah.
sports and all that stuff is kind of a microcosm for motivation and all that. So it was
Oh,
in
yeah.
that subject, but then I just totally wanted to derail it and go a different direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
sweet.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd like to kind of have our listeners know a little bit more about you as well. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and where you're from.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you asked.
It's almost
so-
like you expected it.
Well, yeah, it's like we talked about the general outline of what was going to happen, and this is the part where I talk about
so
myself.
amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of like interviewing. I hate it, but so I am serious about the fact that I have gotten in fights informally when I was younger. I grew up in a little bit of a broken home. You know, I got good relationships with my parents now, but like growing up wasn't the easiest. I rebelled quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so grew up in that broken home. Was trying to figure out, graduated high school and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I joined the Air Force because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for college. So I went into the Air Force. It was a good experience. Worked with an unmanned aerial vehicle called the Global Hawk. And so I learned a lot there. Worked with the satellite communications and the computer systems that were used to fly that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reason that I even went into the Air Force to begin with was so that I could afford Bible college. And so I was able to transfer into the reserves, and I started going to school at William Jessup University. Got my degree in pastoral ministries, strangely enough, and through a crazy, weird, turn of events, and which I'll have to fill you in on that. It's like a miraculous story on how I literally got out of active duty early, and it was like this crazy, turn of events.
Really?
Like that got me got me out of active early and transferred into the reserves. But like I said, I'll fill you in on that some other
definitely.
time.
I'd love to hear that and have our listeners. hear
Yeah.
that too in the future. Yeah.
I think I've done a little Facebook post about it one time.
I
so.
never knew that about you. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So and went to school pastoral ministries, and so naturally I think of in sermon series, and so I was thinking about, like, as you know, the podcast is called Revolutionology. And so I was thinking about this idea of revolution. I've always been passionate about revolution ever since I thought, hey, this would be fun to run from the cops. Had this kind of rebellious, revolutionary kind of edge to me growing up throughout my teenage years. And so I thought about it and ruminated a lot. And then I thought, wow, it'd be so cool to have like a sermon series that was on rebellion, revolution, and revival, because it's such a, just sounds cool. That's pastors like to make sermon series that sound cool and titles that sound cool.
Triple R.
Yeah. So, So I ruminated on that a lot, and I realized, wait a second, like these are all a lot more interconnected than what people realize. Those three concepts, and so what ruminated over and over and over again as I thought about this concept of revolution is a book. I mean, I ended up writing a book, which is most of the way done written now, and now is kind of on the way, working on the editing process, and then it's going to be released within the next 6 months, hopefully. Yeah.
Well, tell me more about like your passion behind that. Like that's the big thing I'm always curious about, and we kind of talked a little bit about it. What drove you to that point? What really motivated you to kind of pursue all of that?
What got me to pursue writing a book in general?
Yeah, and these ideas that you're talking about to write about, like Revolutionology and the triple R.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the triple R.
That's what I'm gonna call it from the triple R.
The triple R, yeah. So it's actually really interesting because I found that I'm not very good at taking action. And taking action is actually something that I really struggle with. That I like to exist in my headspace a lot, which is a strength and a weakness. It's a strength because I've been able to, think about these crazy concepts for a huge amount of time, and then have it literally turn into a book.
Yeah.
And who knows what that could turn into and who it can inspire and stuff like that. But if I have a hard time with action, then you know what they say, those who can't do teach.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, I could just produce content. I just love producing content. So I've been able to narrow in. I thought I wanted to be a pastor. I worked at a church. I found, what, this is not for me. The church politics, all the little odd job, little tasks that go into it, all the administrative stuff behind it. I decided, I don't think that working at a church is necessarily the right fit for me unless there was actually a role where I was producing content.
Yeah.
And so I found like my calling that I found as far as the things that I want to do with my life is to write, teach, preach, and hang out with people.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. So that's where the inspiration behind like writing the book came. There was one day when I was in North Carolina, and for whatever reason I was just extremely inspired to write about something about like the need for a savior and how we've had all these failed saviors throughout our generations and throughout the world. And that actually ended up being chapter 6 of my book.
The book, yeah.
Yeah. And how that came about, I mean, I don't even know how it ended up being chapter 6, but I felt inspired, and then I was ruminating on those thoughts, and it was like, hey, this is chapter 6 of my book, and now I've got the outline in my head, and so I just started pounding away.
Nice. Well, you said, did you tell us about where you're from as well? The actual location and everything?
Oh, no. I was in North Carolina for like 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you said you were born in Portland?
I was born in Portland, yeah.
When did you come here again?
I was actually through the Air Force. I got stationed in the Air Force in California, Northern California, in 2007.
2007?
Yeah.
So it's actually been some time, huh? About, 11 years now?
11 years, yeah. So, I mean, I guess you could call the Sacramento area home at this point.
Yeah. What do you prefer? Do you prefer California and this area, Sacramento, or Portland?
Definitely this area for sure.
Okay.
Portland is,
wise choice.
Yeah. Portland's and your lovely lady lived in Portland for a little while too. Yeah, and Portland's cool, but it's overcast a lot, and I got the whole SAD thing going on, I think, so.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to go there. Yeah. Have you visited?
I have not. I've heard a lot of good things, like the food and everything's really good too. And there's a lot of hipsters there, so.
Oh, gosh. It's like, I read one report that said it was like the fourth
Most hipster city.
the fourth most hipster location, and like the top three places were in like the biggest cities like L.A., Chicago, New York, and then Portland is like 20 something biggest city in the U.S.
What?
So it's way down as far as size goes, but is way up there as far as hipsterism.
Dang,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Which with your man bun, I mean, I think you'd fit in there pretty good.
Right there.
Yeah.
Grow it out. So I mean, it's pretty long too. Need to get it a little longer.
Yeah. So, so what you talked about fighting for a little bit.
Yes.
What would you say your revolution is?
Tell me more when you say revolution. You mean with fighting, with life? With...
Well, let me ask you first this, actually. Let me ask you this. What is revolution to you? What does that mean to you?
That's a really good question. I think revolution to me, every time I think of revolution, I always think of a revolutionary war. And when I think of a revolutionary war, I think of a serious change. So not just a change, but something that's like a really valuable change to someone. Someone that's worth something that's worth fighting for to some people. Revolution and some other, ideas would be like what is the word? Like an innovation. Revolutionizing something to make it better. So I always think of something that's very valuable and meaningful to someone, but also something that makes something better as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think that a revolution could be something small as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a revolution can be very small, and kind of one of the things that I would say I feel like I'm revolutionizing is like dating B and with my community as being an Armenian. It's not the most common thing, and it's usually frowned upon and very disregarded. But I choose to do it because I'm not okay with racism. Like I'm not gonna not like someone because of racist reason. So I think revolution can be even just in a household. Besides just being like, the whole country is gone, doing for whatever. Yeah, I think revolution can be even just yourself, just you in your own headspace. Like when someone gets saved and they get revolutionized in their mindset, So I think revolution can take many different forms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I was gonna ask you too. Then, in your opinion, what do you think, or how do you define revolution? Because I think that's a really good place to start for.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. So, this.
I'm straighten this.
Straighten that. Yeah, we could just cut that out of the video and the podcast, right? Or we could leave it. Either way.
Either one works.
Yeah. Which, by the way, see this beautiful Mary Kay box here? We cut a hole in that, and then we put the microphone on there. This is what you call your first YouTube video podcast, okay?
Yes.
So we cut a little hole here so the thing goes in there. I feel like I innovated the hell out of this box.
I agree.
And I feel pretty revolutionary about this. So the point is, hey, look. If you're at home and you're thinking, man, I can't make a movement, I can't make something happen, I can't do this because I don't have the resources, or look at this box, okay? You can make this shit happen, okay?
Oh man, I did not expect that.
And I said shit as a Christian too, okay? So that's another thing that I'm revolutionizing is the fact that it's okay to be okay with a curse word every now and then. So just so you know. Okay. So revolution. Okay, so this podcast is titled Revolutionology. It's somehow becoming this somewhat of a brand, which who knows where that's going to go. I don't know. It's kind of more my personal, I call my book Revolutionology. It's hard to say 5 times fast. A little tagline: worldview building to empower revolutionaries, because I believe that we're all revolutionaries, or we can all be revolutionaries in some way, shape, or form. Now, if you look at revolution as strictly only in the realm of wars and and rebellions, really, and government overthrows, then we can't all be revolutionaries, nor should
Yeah.
we want to be,
Yeah.
because that's just signing up for death.
Yeah.
And granted, being a revolutionary is the hardest thing that you could possibly sign up to do, but a revolution and a rebellion are a rebellion is a form of revolution. You hear all about that in my book. It's a form of a revolution, but it's not the right form of revolution. And so basically what revolution is, well, revolutionology is the study of revolution, not revolutions, like not plural, but the study of the concept of revolution. Because I've found that it really does infect and infiltrate in a very good way every area of our life.
Yeah.
And so if that's the
Agree.
case, I want to know more about what it means to be a revolutionary, and how it does take place in our life. So basically what revolution is, I'm just going to go nerd status on you here for a second, if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
So people throughout, all the philosophers and stuff throughout history have done this very interesting thing, and they've taken concepts from physics and have actually philosophized it and made it mean something for people, for societies and for cultures and all that kind of stuff. And so, like, let's say, for example, the saying, each action has an equal and opposite reaction. Well, a lot of people would actually build that idea, that concept from physics into the way that they think. And the way that they think then was, hey, this person did this to me, therefore I'm going to get back at them.
Yeah.
And so that was, it's a concept from physics, but people actually build it into their spirits and their souls and their hearts and their minds. And so what revolution is, if we're looking at physics, is a full rotation around an axis, right? So it's that the wheel goes all the way around and it starts a new rotation again. And so revolution, what that is for humanity, is basically the end of one age and the beginning of another. Now all these spinning wheels are kind of like spinning gears, connected to a clock, and we have all kinds of different sizes of little wheels happening in our lives. It could be small ones, it could be big ones, but like, let's say, for example, for each of us individually, we have multiple wheels that are all connected like gears on a clock inside of us. We may start a revolution for our physical health. We may start a revolution for our, for our education, just for us internally and for us personally. But then that can actually connect to other gears that are also turning throughout the world. And you have no idea just how much that is going to affect these other spinning gears throughout the world.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's basically, what revolutionology is all about, is figuring out, hey, first of all, where can I affect a possible revolution, and how do I take action in that?
Yeah.
Because that's what, like I said, I have a hard time with action. I think in concepts all the time. I exist in headspace. But what I'm trying to do is, and I've built a philosophy almost to help myself, to say, hey, figure out the very tangible action that I can take that's in line with my personal revolution and do it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think what you said with the full rotation, that's actually a really good concept for a lot of people to grasp for revolution, because it is a full rotation of something. Something is changing. I really like the idea that you said, like starting new. I thought that was really cool. Yeah. So now that we've talked about revolutionology a bit, kind of our ideas of revolution, and a little bit about ourselves, what do you think we should share now?
What do you think we should share? Good question for our first ever podcast,
Yeah.
YouTube. Well, we could, some of the plan that we have for this, we fill people in and say like, hey, we want to see, these kind of different people come on and talk about these different concepts.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. What are the 5 top concepts, things that you are excited to talk about in this?
Concept. So, I mean, concept in the sense of like what ideas would I like to discuss in particular with this podcast, or just kind of like a direction?
As far as, because we discuss like different things that people typically debate over.
Yeah.
And so I know you're really itching to talk about weed.
Oh yeah. Yep. I mean, that's one idea. I would say where um, weed stands as a Christian, and if there's justifications for it, if there isn't, and just to make things clear for all of our listeners, where I currently stand for that, and we don't have to dive into it or anything. I still feel like it's not okay, but still want to try and understand it biblically and spiritually and whatever else. Yeah, that topic is one of the ones that I've been kind of looking into as a Christian. What does smoking mean? And where does that stand? Um, I really like. I don't know if I've told you this much, but I really like discussing Christianity amongst other religions. So one of the biggest questions I ask myself this first before I ask anyone, but like, why Christianity? Why Christianity and not like Jehovah Witnessism or whatever it is, or Mormonism or Islam, or any of those other religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, like why that? So I think that's another topic that I really dive into with a lot of people, at least try to. Yeah, and I love, and I'm hoping that we're going to get to that point to do it even more, just interviewing people, understanding people, and seeing why they think the way they think, and kind of the motives behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's critical because part of the whole concept behind this is how do we build a worldview that we can go off of, that we can act off of, because people that act differently than what they believe they're not whole people, right? Like there's, and in fact that's where the word integrity comes from, is actually the word integer, believe it or not. So, yeah, did you know that?
No.
Yeah, so
integer number, right?
Integer is a whole number, right?
Yeah.
Like not 0.5, not 7.7.
Yeah.
It's either 1, 2, 3, 4. So the point is, use that for your matching up the audio and video.
One. Yeah.
So
editing joke. That's
so yeah, integer is where we get the word integrity from, and so to be somebody with integrity means that you are whole.
Yeah.
And so what that means to me is that actually understanding what you believe is absolutely essential to being able to know how to generate a plan and to take the right action in your life. And so to be a revolutionary, it's absolutely essential that you are in line with what you believe, so much so because as soon as you decide, hey, I'm going to do this with my life, there's going to be everything in the world against you.
Yeah.
And the only way that you're going to be able to continue to press forward is if you are completely in line. You know exactly what you believe. You've wrestled with it over. And that's not to say that, like, once you have your beliefs, that it's going to be set in stone.
Yeah.
Because even this conversation right now, our beliefs are subject to, as the guy that you sent me the YouTube video for, Jordan Peterson, like, as he says, like, as we're talking, some beliefs wither and die so that new ones can come back to life.
Yep.
And that is the constant, that's the constant struggle of life, and a lot of it is based on conversation. We have to have conversations. We have to communicate so that we can continue to wrestle with what we believe.
Oh, yeah.
Between all these different religions. And be able to approach it with humility and with love.
And with understanding.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big ones too. And not to cut you off, but even with it, it's like what I've come to understand was just coming with understanding towards people, or seeking understanding. So a lot of times when I would converse with my Muslim friends, I'd say, hey, this is what's happening, or this is what I'm presented with, or this is what I see. What do you say about this? Like, I'm trying to understand this. If this is what you believe and this is, what I'm seeing or what I've observed or what I heard, what's the bridge between the two, if there is, or if it's not? Like, can you justify this or whatever? Kind of give me some explanation. Yeah. Understanding, I've come to find out, really kind of makes people feel heard and loved and appreciated and valued, or else it's just kind of like, what do you mean? You're not trying to understand anything I'm saying, and then it kind of goes all out the window. But yeah, understanding, I would say.
Well, let me ask you this then too. Do you think there's a point where you could ever be done? Like you've reached your point of knowledge and
Absolutely, I've done that about a year. No, I'm kidding. Done that about a year. No. I to be completely honest, that's another one of the questions that I always say. From what I believe, no, not in this life. One of my questions I always say is in the next life, like in heaven or hell or whatever it is. Like, do you fully understand everything at that point? And I think still, even with that, I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I've wrestled with that too, like,
Yeah.
because I think definitely in this life, of course, like if you ever think that you've made it, you know enough now. I was once talking to a guy that I used to work with, and I asked him a question. He's like, I don't know. I figure I know enough about the world now. I don't need to think about these things anymore. And yeah, I just thought, man, that's kind of sad,
Yeah.
because then basically what happens is you create divisions between people because you're not able to communicate and wrestle with this stuff. So in this life, I love that you brought that up. In this life, definitely, like I feel like we should keep wrestling no matter what.
Absolutely.
Like it's a continual conversation, a continual struggle, and then in that struggle, though, we find life.
Yeah.
Which is great. And the thing is, like, if you continue to converse, if you continue to wrestle, I have faith that I'm not gonna that I'm gonna find truth.
Yeah.
Basically, I have faith that in this life, if we struggle, we will find truth.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter if you're actually going into it with discernment and trying to find truth, that you can find truth no matter who you're talking to, no matter what conversation you're having, and that the more you struggle, the more you're able to filter out what's truth and what's not.
Yeah. And even with it too, it's like, and if you're listening to this podcast, it's okay. Like, that's the one thing I had to kind of come in agreement with. It's okay to question what you believe. And I think so many people, they're like, oh, it's not okay. I don't want to question what I believe because then, I don't know.
Mm.
And to be 100% vulnerable, and I don't say this too much, like, I've questioned my faith to the point of, do I even believe this anymore?
Mm.
To be completely honest, like, I've questioned it to that point of, like, is this even real? And sometimes it's weeks and weeks and weeks of me just questioning it. And sometimes there's, like, weeks and months and so much time where I'm like, no, this is 100%, I'm like, understand it, it makes absolute sense, no doubt, and I just want to have our listeners even understand that it's 100% okay to question things. And I've had a lot of friends do that to me. I would say something, and right when I'd say it, they'd question it, and I'd always feel attacked. One of my cousins, if he ever listens to this, who I, at the time, really didn't like that he did this, but now, like, I appreciate it so freaking much, because for me, it's like, you were able to joust with me on these ideas, and now I'm like, okay, I'm better and I'm stronger, and this is actually something that I love to do. I always love seeking truth, but I always hated, like, jousting. I don't know.
Jousting.
That's the
confrontation.
word. Yeah.
Like leaning into conflict.
Yeah. I didn't like doing that. I mean, I wasn't necessarily afraid of it, but I just didn't like doing it. And I was a fighter, so I was like, hey, but just taking someone's idea and saying, no, that's wrong because of these reasons, or if you think it's right, support it. And now I've realized, no matter what I say, I don't just say it just because. I say it for, reasons, whether it be logical, whether it be because of evidence, whether, like, there's something that backs up why I think. And I think most people are like that. They have an opinion, and they have reasons towards that opinion of justifying it. But I think questioning it all the time, if it can still stand after all of that, then that's a really good idea, and faith, I think, is one of the biggest ones to always question.
Yeah.
Because that's your faith, your religion, whatever that may be, whether you believe, even if you don't believe, that's going to determine the rest of your life,
Right.
or that period of life, and how you respond to things. And yeah, so questioning it. Why are you where you are, and why do you think what you think?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I think that if there's anybody that is that doesn't, or that outwardly says that they don't question things, I think they're lying.
Yeah.
That's, I think that's something that is part of the human experience.
Oh yeah.
I recently had a friend that came into town, and he, he went to college with me, Bible college, wanted to go into ministry, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Ben, close your ears. This is going to hurt your evangelical heart. and, and and then he proceeded to talk about why he thinks that evangelicalism is not the right, is not good, and all this stuff. And my first question to him is, why do you think that would hurt my heart? Like,
Yeah.
it's not. It's okay that if you think that this general vein of Christianity is doing things wrong, like, I mean, I would actually agree with you. I look at the way that, kind of mainstream Christianity is doing things, and I'm like, you're making some huge mistakes.
Yeah.
And if somebody says that they have lost faith with a major sect in Christianity, then I would say, well, to be honest, I have too. Just because I love to talk about Jesus doesn't mean that I'm somehow, part of this mainstream sect of Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those are two-way different things.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people see it like overlap, and they kind of think it's one and the same. But I like one of the things you mentioned is like when you told your friend, well, why did you think that? And one of the other things I was thinking about is it's okay to not know as well. Like, I think a lot of times people's pride, sometimes they're like, I'm just gonna make an assumption, and they make the assumption or stick to that assumption due to some pride. And it's okay to not even know, hey, I don't know if this is gonna offend you, but hey, this is what it is. Or even just stating opinions. Sometimes a lot of people, they're like, they want to be opinionated about something but have no idea about anything. I think politics is definitely a big a space for that. So many people are opinionated about so many different things politically, and it's like, wait, do you even know?
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
do you even know like what is being passed through legislature and all? Yeah.
Do you know what this means? Do you know what's happening? Do you know what you're fighting for? And oftentimes, like, down to the real core of it, some people don't. Which is, frankly, that's quite sad. Honestly, it's like you don't know what you're fighting for, but you're fighting so diligently towards something.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you're fighting for.
Boy, that's kind of scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thinking that people could be fighting that hardcore for something that they don't they don't even know that much about it. Like, what even gets somebody to be sucked into that to the point where they give their entire life for something that may not be worth giving your life to?
Yeah. We might even see that in this podcast. I mean, who knows?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm excited about the things that are going to be coming, and as we're working out the kinks, with our little Mary Kay box. Thank you, Bree. Bree is my wife. Oh, I forgot to talk about my wife. I made him talk about his girlfriend. I didn't. She's awesome. That's all you need to know for now.
She is.
I'm sure you'll hear more. Oh my gosh, we got a little baby on the way.
Yeah.
Love her.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. So, and her name is Bree. She does the whole Mary Kay thing, but she's the most phenomenal woman in the world. So, yeah. I'm gonna. All for you, baby.
All for you,
so hopefully I get some later tonight.
To show this to her,
My goal is to get as many Christians listening to somebody that's a Christian say the most absurd things and get blacklisted on many churches.
I don't know this guy, by the way. I don't know him.
Well, I thought about making fun of Armenians, but then I realized I might end up in the back of a trunk.
You never know. You never know.
But I'm excited. I'm excited to be able to lean into these different things and these different concepts. And for me personally, I can always bring it back to the idea and the concept of revolution, and basically all the stuff that we're talking about right here too, building your worldview, like thinking about these different religions, and all of it's in my book too. So when it comes out, I think that it's going to be really beneficial for just helping build the worldview, and then I'm planning on coming out with more stuff as far as in specific veins and how that applies to business, how it applies to health, how it applies to communities, stuff like that. So, other than that, anything else that you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, I want to invite you guys, if you don't know Jesus Christ our Lord and Savior. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, God.
And if you want to give to us, there's a link. No. Just like any TV. And no, I'm kidding. We're going to scratch that. No. Yeah, no. So, of course, I mean, we invite you guys to be a part of what we're doing and listening and subscribing and following along. But also, kind of what you were just saying is taking some of this at home and applying it to yourself. And really, I think this is going to be, like you said, kind of going against a lot of the grain and testing a lot of people. And it's going to be testing for us as well. I think there's a lot of controversial things that we're going to talk about that maybe you might be on the other end or I might, and really seeing how that kind of takes out, and even with other people that we invite over here. But yeah, I just want to invite our listeners to join in with that, and I mean, don't be afraid to do the same with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Copy that. All right. Cool. Well, we'll see you
You're
guys.
checking out.
Yeah, see you guys soon. How often are we going to do this thing?
That's a really good question. You've been asking great questions all day. Let's try, I don't know, maybe one a week or two a week or one a week. We will keep you posted.
one per week.
Yeah.
Every, what's today? Thursday?
Today is Thursday.
Well, we're not going to dedicate a specific day.
No.
So,
we will do our best to make it one a week.
So there's our first one, and like I said, we'll see you soon, and we're excited to see what kind of developments are going to come out of this, and how this is going to change your life, and then potentially the people in your life, and your community, your family, and the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Cool. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace. Now I gotta close this. Oh, it's on Do Not Disturb. It's okay. We can edit that. That's already ended. I'm gonna let the audio run though, because I like to put piece them together. Come on. I hope the phone didn't turn off or something. That would suck.
That would suck so bad.